The 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde gave America a portrait of the lawman who finally caught them. A buffoonish, humiliated fool who stumbled through the investigation and got outsmarted at every turn. Denver Pyle played him for laughs. Frank Hamer's widow and son sued for defamation. They settled out of court in 1971. The real Frank Hamer spent 102 days methodically tracking his targets. He understood that by 1934, pistol-caliber weapons were useless against Clyde Barrow's stolen Ford V8. Officers had already tried and failed when Thompson rounds bounced off the car body like hail off a tin roof. So Hamer chose a Remington Model 8 chambered in .35 Remington, 200-grain bullet, capable of piercing 5/16-inch steel plate. He modified it with a 15-round magazine, triple the civilian capacity. He didn't want a gunfight, he wanted certainty. On a Louisiana road in May 1934, he got it in under 20 seconds. This is the real story of Frank Hamer and the calculated ballistic execution that ended Bonnie and Clyde. Welcome to Wild West Revealed. Francis Augustus Hamer came into the world on March 17, 1884, in Fairview, Wilson County, Texas. His father Franklin ran a blacksmith shop. His mother Lou Emma kept the household running while her husband worked iron. When Frank was 10, the family moved to Oxford in Llano County. He spent his adolescence in that blacksmith shop, learning metal, building calluses, developing the hands that would later strip and clean rifles by feel alone. Formal schooling ended around 6th grade. Everything after that he taught himself. The Texas State Historical Association records that Hamer trained himself in horsemanship and marksmanship during those years on his own initiative. This wasn't a man who learned to shoot when he pinned on a badge. He arrived already dangerous. In 1901, he and his brother Harrison hired on as wranglers at Greenberry Ketchum Jr.'s ranch in Pecos County. 4 years later, while working the Carr Ranch, Hamer captured a horse thief single-handed. Sheriff Dudley S. Barger took notice. He recommended the young man for the Texas Rangers. On April 21, 1906, Frank Hamer enlisted in Captain John H. Rogers' Company C. By 1922, his marksmanship had impressed Remington enough that the company presented him an engraved Model 8F rifle after witnessing his shooting during ranger operations against bootleggers in Mexico. That rifle became his favorite deer gun. Remington didn't hand those out to just anyone. But by 1934, the frontier Hamer had known was gone. Outlaws drove Ford V8s that could outrun anything law enforcement had. The steel bodies of those cars had changed what stopping power meant. A revolver that worked fine in 1890 was useless against Clyde Barrow's ride. If you're learning something new about the real history behind the legends, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started, and the details coming up are ones you won't find in any Hollywood movie. Hamer understood the problem better than most. The weapons of the past couldn't stop the criminals of the present. He needed something designed for a different kind of fight entirely. The rifle most closely associated with Frank Hamer at the Bonnie and Clyde ambush is the Remington Model 8, chambered in .35 Remington. The man who designed it was John Moses Browning, the same gunmaker behind the 1911 pistol and the Browning automatic rifle. Remington introduced the rifle as the auto-loading rifle in 1906 and renamed it the Model 8 in 1911. Over 100,000 were eventually produced. 22-inch jacketed barrel, long recoil semi-automatic action. Standard civilian magazine held 5 rounds. Loaded by stripper clip, 4 rounds typical in the .35 Remington chambering. But Hamer's rifle wasn't standard. American Rifleman reports his Model 8 used a 15-round detachable magazine, triple the civilian capacity. Those extended magazines were available through the Peace Officers Equipment Company in St. Joseph, Missouri, specifically for law enforcement use. That modification turned a hunting rifle into something else entirely. The cartridge mattered as much as the rifle. 200-grain bullet. Muzzle velocity around 2,000 feet per second. Muzzle energy of 1,776 foot-pounds at the muzzle. Here's the number that explains everything. Remington's 1909 catalog advertised the .35 Remington could pierce 5/16-inch steel plate at 15 feet from the muzzle. That wasn't legend. That was advertising copy backed by ballistic testing. Officers had already learned the hard way why that penetration mattered. In late November 1933, Dallas officers, including Deputy Ted Hinton, attempted to ambush the Barrow gang near Sowers, Texas. They opened fire. The gang escaped. Afterward, officers examined Clyde's abandoned Ford V8 and found the problem. Thompson's submachine gun rounds had failed to penetrate the car body effectively. Pistol-caliber bullets bounced off Clyde Barrow's stolen ride like hail off a tin roof. Hinton learned from that failure. He specifically requested a Browning automatic rifle for the next attempt. The whole posse was upgrading. They'd learned what doesn't work against automotive steel. American Rifleman describes the Model 8's long recoil action as working in your face while firing. The barrel physically reciprocates under the barrel jacket with each shot. This wasn't a quiet, smooth action. It was mechanically active and violent. You felt the rifle working in your hands. Now, about the famous Bonnie and Clyde rifle you can visit today. The rifle, commonly identified as Hamer's ambush gun, sits in the Texas Ranger Museum in Waco, serial number 10045. But Texas Ranger Hall of Fame and Museum research reveals a problem. That rifle is a Model 81, and Model 81 production didn't begin until 1936. The ambush happened in 1934. The museum piece cannot be the ambush rifle. The legend is cleaner than the evidence. The truth is messier and more honest. By May 1934, Hamer had tracked the Barrow gang for 102 days. He knew their patterns, he knew their routes, he knew their car, and now he had a weapon specifically chosen to punch through it. May 23, 1934, a rural road near Sales, also called Gibsland, in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. The posse consisted of 6 men, Frank Hammer and former Ranger Maney Galt, Bienville Parish Sheriff Henderson Jordan, and Deputy Prentice Oakley. Dallas County, Deputies Bob Alcorn and Ted Hinton. They had studied Clyde Barrow's habits. They knew he visited the father of gang member Henry Methvin on this road. They concealed themselves in brush along the roadside before dawn and waited. Early daylight, a stolen tan Ford V8 appeared on the road. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, America's most wanted outlaws, responsible for at least 13 murders, a string of bank robberies that had humiliated law enforcement across Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Louisiana for 2 years. The car slowed. The posse opened fire. FBI history records what happened next. The pair were killed almost immediately. Not a prolonged gunfight, not a dramatic shootout. A sudden, concentrated execution at close range, well over 100 rounds fired. The vehicle was so riddled with bullet holes that photographs taken afterward showed daylight coming through the body panels. Both outlaws dead in the car. Hamer himself later described the posse's loadout to historian Walter Prescott Webb. Jordan and I had automatic shotguns, 3 had Winchesters, 1 a machine gun, and all carried revolvers or automatic pistols. That quote complicates every simplified telling. This wasn't one legendary lawman with 1 legendary rifle. It was layered firepower, shotguns, rifles, at least 1 Browning automatic rifle, at least 1 Remington Model 8, and sidearms for backup. They didn't want a gunfight. They wanted certainty. The 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde told a different story. Denver Pyle played Hamer as a bumbling, humiliated fool who stumbled through the investigation and got outsmarted at every turn. Hamer's widow and son sued for defamation. They settled out of court in 1971. The lawsuit isn't trivia, it's proof of how far Hollywood drifted from reality. The real Frank Hamer spent 102 days methodically tracking his targets, planned the ambush down to the ballistics, and engineered their deaths with cold precision. But what about the Sowers failure that taught them so much? That November 1933 ambush failed because the weapons weren't adequate. Thompson rounds couldn't get through steel. Clyde Barrow escaped. Bonnie Parker escaped. For another 6 months, they stayed free. More people died during those months. The human cost of that ballistic failure was measured in bodies. The lesson was written in blood. If you want to stop these outlaws, you need weapons that can get through automotive steel. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about the real history behind the headlines. Drop a like, so I know to keep digging into stories like this one. The Remington Model 8 wasn't Hamer's only weapon, and the ambush wasn't a one-rifle operation. Credible secondary sources report Hamer carried a Colt Super .38 automatic during the Bonnie and Clyde hunt. The cartridge was specifically chosen because it was thought to penetrate automobile bodies better than standard service revolver rounds. This was a service-size pistol carried on the belt, not a pocket gun. Texas Ranger Hall of Fame and museum records also document that Hamer owned a Smith & Wesson New Model No. 3 revolver, an older sidearm in his collection. Whether he wore it at Gibsland is not confirmed. The sidearms were backups. The entire point of the ambush was to never let it get close enough for pistol work. The full Posse loadout tells the real story. Hamer and Sheriff Henderson Jordan carried automatic shotguns. 3 officers had Winchester rifles. Ted Hinton brought his Browning automatic rifle, the one he'd specifically requested after the Sowers failure taught him what a Thompson couldn't do. All 6 men carried revolvers or automatic pistols as contingency weapons. Clyde Barrow's Ford Vi-8 was effectively light armor on wheels. The posse planned for a scenario where standard police weapons had already failed once. They wanted overwhelming ballistic dominance, not a fair fight. Layered redundancy, shotguns for close-range devastation, rifles for penetration through steel, the bar for sustained automatic fire if needed. Sidearms only if everything else went wrong. Nothing was left to chance. Nothing was left to marksmanship alone. The weapons survived. The engraved Remington Model 8F, presented to Hamer after the 1922 Mexia operations, is documented today at the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame and Museum, on loan from the Sam Houston Sanders Course of Cadet Center at Texas A&M University. The Model 81 serial number 10045 sits in the Texas Ranger Museum in Waco, displayed as Hamer's rifle. But as we've established, museum research indicates it cannot have been the ambush weapon. The gun survived, the legend survived. But which version of the legend? Frank Hamer died on July 10th, 1955, at his home in Austin, Texas. Congenital heart failure. He was 71 years old. Over his career, he claimed 52 gunfights and showed the scars of being shot 23 times, and he died in bed. Hollywood has given us 2 Frank Hamers. Denver Pyle played him in the 1967 Bonnie and Clyde, a buffoonish villain who gets humiliated at every turn. Kevin Costner played him in the 2019 film The Highwaymen, a weary, methodical lawman who does the hard work of tracking dangerous people through patience and planning. The 1967 version was fiction so distorted that his family sued and won a settlement. The 2019 version is closer to the documented record. The real Frank Hamer was a planner, a hunter, a man who understood that by 1934 stopping power meant something different than it had in 1890. The Outlaws had adapted to the automobile age. Law enforcement had to catch up. He caught up. The Gibsland ambush wasn't a cowboy shootout. It was a calculated ballistic execution designed, planned, and equipped to make absolutely certain that Bonnie and Clyde would never drive away. The exact rifle Hamer fired on that May morning remains disputed. The museum piece probably isn't the real gun. The evidence is messier than the myth. But the ballistics were real. The penetration was real. The 200 grains punching through 5/16" steel plate, that was real. And on a rural Louisiana road in 1934, that reality caught up with America's most wanted outlaws in under 20 seconds. If you made it this far, drop a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the real history behind the legends. Share this with someone who cares about the truth behind American history. The real story is always more interesting than the movie.